The gentleman from Manassas, Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for a point of personal privilege.
Gentleman may proceed.
And thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's not Medicaid involved. Mr. Speaker, but I rise today to talk about a piece of United States American military history. And it's also a piece of Virginia history. It involves mostly a young man who was drafted by the United States Army to go to Vietnam. This young man did not want to go to Vietnam. It's a young Virginia man, but he went because his country asked. And today's the day I got up to speak about this, Mr. Speaker, because the incident that shattered the lives of several Americans and truly shook the life of this Virginian happened on this date, February 27th, 46 years ago. Mr. Speaker, this young man was a sergeant in the Charlie Company of the 2nd Battalion of the 35th Infantry Division. And on this day, he and his brothers in arms were on patrol in some crappy little jungle in Vietnam. Mr. Speaker, like so many other incidences that happened in this conflict, in this war, it was a lot of calm, nothing happening for long periods of time, with all of a sudden energy, sudden death, sudden outbursts. And on this day, February 27th, that type of incident happened. In this day, this Virginian was on patrol when all of a sudden they came under ambush. This Virginian was near the front of his squad when the ambush happened. He hit the ground just like the rest of his squad, taking cover, realizing that his brother next to him had died. A hand grenade from the ambush lands near them, and he's peppered, and he's torn up with hot pieces of iron. That was the shrapnel from that grenade. He tries to get back to the rest of his unit's position and finds that another one of his brothers, Art was his name, was dead as well from gunfire. And this injured Virginian, with just a breaking heart because he was trying to get back to cover and leaving his brothers, Mike and Art, who lay deceased, heard from his lieutenant, Lieutenant Kraut, who was with the rest of the unit back in some sort of indentation in the ground there, maybe behind a couple trees. And his lieutenant screaming to him, "Get up, Sergeant. Get yourself over here. Run, run." Because the guys in that little area of safety, the hail of gunfire made it impossible for them to go out and grab their brothers. So this young sergeant from Virginia gets up and he starts to run. Run to the rest of his unit where there might be safety. And then a bullet hits him in the forearm, tears his forearm apart. Another bullet, most likely these bullets come from an AK-47, it's a very high velocity, very deadly, dangerous round, hits him in the torso, right underneath his heart. This Virginian goes to the ground, and his colleagues are still screaming, "Get over here, come on, you can make it, do it." And Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, I can't imagine the hell that this fellow Virginian went through. Crawling through the blood, his friend's blood, mud, broken twigs, broken sticks, dirt flying up all around him as bullets are landing all over the place. Perhaps thinking he's about to bleed to death because he has lost so much of his blood. Mr. Speaker, right around this point, this young Virginian realizes how important God is in his life. And at this point, he starts to believe that God will protect him. And he believes that the armor of God settled around him. Finally, Mr. Speaker, as I'm sure the life may have been draining from the soldier's body, his friend, Fred Ostendorf, jumps out from the cover, grabs him, pulls him back into safety. Now, luckily, They were able to evacuate him and maybe a few of his brothers that were injured to a safer location. And one of the things that stuck with this young soldier as he was being dragged to and carried to the medevac site is his friend Fred Ostendorf recited the 23rd Psalm as he was brought to this helicopter. And it was more evidence in this young soldier's life that God was so important to him in this time of tragedy, in this time of hell. So, Mr. Speaker, this young Virginian comes back home. But before he gets there, they bring him to the Philippines where they start to repair him, start to replace his mangled body. Catches malaria twice before they're able to get him all the way back home to the States. Comes home to the States, Mr. Speaker, to find fellow Americans arrogant, degenerate, in my mind, almost evil persons screaming at him, spitting at him for going to Vietnam, for serving the country that asked him to bear arms. Mr. Virginian, this young Virginia soldier, this young Virginia sergeant comes home and comes to find that high school buddies of his had also lost their lives in Vietnam. Specifically, Rick Haggart was a classmate in high school. Another friend of his, Gilbert Page, died in the quite frankly, a battle of waste and broken humans for no reason. It's called the Battle of Hamburger Hill in Vietnam. His friend, Gilbert Page, died there. And Mr. Speaker, this Virginian had to rebuild his body. He had the support of a loving wife and the support from his faith in God. And he rebuilt himself, and he went on to live a prosperous and fruitful life here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Mr. Speaker, on that day, 46 years ago, this young Virginian left his blood, his Virginia blood, in that Vietnamese soil. And more importantly, he lost his brothers in that Vietnamese soil. So, Mr. Speaker, when the majority leader adjourns today to come back here tomorrow, I would like to ask that this body take a couple moments, if you can, and thank that young Virginian. Thank that sergeant that sacrificed so much for this country. All it takes is a little thank you. I appreciate the service. So I'd ask that each one of you do that, because I think it might mean a lot to that hero, that Virginia hero, that American hero. So take that time, and after we recess, please go over and tell Gordon Helsel that you appreciate the service and the sacrifice that he's given to this country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gordon, I know I speak for each of us when we do say thank you. Thank you for all that you did. I bet some of you feeling badly about killing his bills in committee.